Okay, so I remember when I was younger, getting into spirituality as a teenager, the idea of astral projection and lucid dreaming was always very interesting to me. I think everyone thought it was really cool and interesting because the idea of imagine if you could just enter into a dream and it was just as vivid as reality and you could do whatever you want within it. Wouldn't that be fun? When you're younger and you don't really have much power in the world, escapism is what you use or what you do. Anyway, and if you read into like spiritual traditions and all this, they're always talking about, when sages leave their bodies temporarily, and it kind of gets into things like psychic abilities like remote viewing and such. And I can at least say that through simply using your imagination and imagining that you are near someone or like seeing them or whatever, you can view, you can psychically essentially view where they are, what they're doing. This is like the NSA before technology, or the FBI or whatever. Like, actually, if you look into it, I believe it's like, was it the CIA or the FBI or whatever? They had all this. They have the MK Ultra, and they had all this operation, whatever it is. So they've investigated pretty heavily into this stuff. But you're going to have to figure that out on your own, of course. Also, in the video game, if anyone plays Genshin Impact, which is a very fun video game, it's been just eating up my life. Though admittedly it's a good stress relief, so I don't really mind. There's this character in it who essentially she enters her own like psychic realm, so to speak, and she just kind of sits there and meditates. The plane of euthymia, that one. I thought that was pretty cool, and essentially that's what we're going to do. So if anyone's seen that, then you probably know what this is. Okay, first of all, step 0 for people who simply just do not know, who cannot imagine, who just have no ability, or they're just really if you're really bad at using your imagination, you need to first practice it. And I honestly don't really know how to get someone who just has no imagination to have an imagination. My hypothesis is, firstly, you would, this can work for anyone. You focus around the kind of the center of your brain. So if you focus on your eyeballs and then you kind of go inward into like the center area behind your eyeballs, there is a physical area of the brain which is related to imaginary vision. And one thing you've got to understand about the imagination is that it's not just vision, it's hearing, it's vision, it's smell, it's touch and taste, right? So there are all these senses of the imagination, and technically they all kind of link into one unified sense. So that's one way to think about it. So you can focus on that area, just sit or stand or lay or whatever and focus around that area. And eventually, if you focus on it long enough, you'll begin to have like LSD-like hallucination visuals, especially if you're doing it at night when you're laying down. It's kind of uncomfortable, so I don't really recommend it for that long. But that takes, you have to focus there for like half an hour to get that. Secondly, I would imagine if you have a piece of paper and you draw pieces like symbols on it, like circles and crosses and lines and whatever, that you try to stare at it and burn it into your eyes. So that's if you have zero imagination. Maybe try the piece of paper. If you have a little bit of imagination, you start off by trying to imagine like a two-dimensional space, like a white or a black or like a canvas, right? Then you start off with a ring or a circle or a line, or a square or a triangle, some kind of basic geometry, and you move the circle up and down in your imagination. And if your canvas is, say, grey or white, whatever, you have a black circle, it's easier. You can pick whatever colour you want. It's really up to you. And if you're a little more advanced, you can pick whatever object you want. So you just move it up and down, and you just try to imagine what that looks like, and left and right. Again, if you have zero imagination, get a piece of paper. Move the piece of paper with the circle up and down, left and right, so you visually understand what it looks like. Because you've got to understand, if you have no imagination, it's a visual skill. So if you train your vision, maybe you take up art, you might start to develop it. Who knows? I also like to feel the shape, to feel the circle or square or triangle, as if I'm embodying it and putting my energy into it, because it allows me to control it finally. And eventually you want to kind of curve the circle around, to spin it around, and it seems to grow, smaller or more compact or whatever. If you look up an ellipse, it turns into an ellipse. And then eventually you use a three-dimensional shape, so cubes and pyramids and spheres, and then you practice with real objects like the apple. The test of, can you see an apple in your imagination, and how well can you see it? I want you to be able to see an apple crisp and perfect, to see how it's got that, it's got a bit of yellow, and it's got a bit of green on it, and it's got a bit of red, and it's got kind of a textured, almost like a tiger or something, or like a tree, like a wood pattern. It's got this textured pattern on it, and you can see it's got a little shine, and it's got that waxiness to it, and it's got that little dried stem coming out, and the bottom's got that little dried, that weird flower pattern thing going on, and it's kind of, it's got those little bit of edges, but still kind of round and nice, and it's, it's juicy. You take a bite out of it, and the juice just spilling everywhere, and it tastes sweet, and it's crisp and crunchy, but just a little bit of squishiness give to it, but it's still nice and crisp. You want to get to that point where you're just hallucinating yourself, eating the apple, or really anything. You can hallucinate people in a city walking, your cars driving, just the beach, the ocean coming in and out. Anyway, if you now have a little bit of a basic grasp of imagination, we will start with the techniques. So firstly, I want you to, I'm standing because that's what I do. I've trained myself to be able to stand. But if you're sitting, that's fine. And if you can't do this while sitting, if you need to lay, or actually what's really good is if you can lay on a chair that has a back on it. It's comfortable. That's the best way to... so you get really good thoughts there. You get those shower thoughts, when you can relax and you just figure reality out on a lazy boy chair. To get comfortable, and then you close your eyes. If you're good enough, you don't need to close your eyes, but you probably should, and just relax and focus in kind of that middle center of the head, and just kind of relax it and let it, let the blood circulate there. And I want you to 360 degrees all around you. I want you to imagine a space. I'm kind of thinking like a purpley, I'm in a voidy, spacey, cosmic area. You can imagine, if you want, you can think you're in a house or in the beach or in the forest, or, whatever location. If you just want to keep it simple, it could just be a white area, right? Like a void. And you want to be able to bring that like a map. You're spawning a map, and you want to bring that up around you, okay? And just focus on the area. Feel the area out, and notice that it is fully around you. And your kind of center of consciousness and feeling and such is in the middle of this area. Okay. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to look around it. Turn your head, right? So what we're doing is we are projecting into the imaginary world. You're turning your imaginary head. If you have to turn your physical head while closing your eyes just to help you out, you can. Otherwise, just feel as if you're turning your head. And you feel as if you have a head, right? So you're creating like a phantom spectral energy head. Once you kind of look around the area, I want you to grow a pair of hands, right? Feel as if you have these ghost hands, these ghost sticks coming out of your sides, and then kind of move them around and try to move your hands and see your hands as well alongside the map or the background or the whatever world you have generated for yourself. And they don't have to be they're very detailed. They can just be, they can just be made out of energy, some kind of color, like a black or purple or blue or whatever, whatever you like, a white maybe, whatever you want to make it, doesn't matter. Or it could be a real hand, just similar to your own hand. It can be as dense or subtle as you want. And finally, try to feel out into your feet and walk around, move your feet around, push yourself left, push yourself right, walk forwards a bit, and this one can be kind of hard, and then use your feet and your legs and hips to turn. It's kind of like you're turning the world, but you're turning yourself around, and because you're turning yourself around, the world kind of spins around. Do you get what I mean? I always found that a weird thing in a video game. If anyone's played the Assassin's Creed games, there's like a loading screen where you are in like a void and you keep walking, but it seems like you're not walking at all. You're walking in like you're stuck in a position, but you're kind of doing the walking movements, and the world seems to be moving. You aren't moving, but it's the world moving, and it's like that's when you break the void of reality. Am I even moving, or am I just like thinking I'm moving and changing the world to move? Realistically, I think we are moving, but that's in the imaginary world. That's how it works. It's like one of those cartoons with the endless backgrounds that just keep cycling, when they're in the car. Anyway, so move your body around in this virtual environment and notice as the background, the area you're in kind of changes as you move your vision and your body, and get comfortable with it. Now, really, you can do whatever you want. You can, for example, practice interacting with objects. Try to imagine a ball, right? Just feel your hands and then feel a ball and kind of compress the energy into matter and create the ball in your hands, and just feel it out, and touch it and feel the solidity and kind of how it pushes back to you. And then you can throw the ball and then create another ball and throw it again, and just create lots of balls, and just you can throw them. You can throw them into the air. You can kick the balls. Just interacting and feeling what it's like to create an object and to interact. And you want to despawn the object after you're done, which you just focus on the object and you kind of release, you kind of dissipate. The way I see it is you feel the matter and you make it subtle. You make it turn it back into energy, and then you turn it back into nothing, like you're dissolving it almost. And What you can do is you can create other people, and they can gain like a semi-soul. Is this ethical? I don't know. It's like a mental homunculus. To do that, it doesn't have to be a person. It can be like a little spirit or a little animal. Imagine some kind of form. Again, if you want to make it like an animal, or you want to make it some kind of like energy being, or you want to make it a person, imagine the physical form and spin them around. So create the body or the clothing, whatever, and spin them around to make sure, and look at their arms and be like, are their arms okay? Do they need to be bigger? Are the legs okay? Do they need to be smaller, bigger, taller, shorter? Does the face look okay? Focus on the intention of seeing the face and trying to look at that, and you will see it, and then do that. And once you have the form created, what you want to do is you want to like puppeteer it. You want to move them. You want to force them to walk, almost as if you are projecting your will into their body and psychically making them walk around, right? This is where you can practice psychic abilities, telekinesis essentially. So I'm making a person walk in front of me. We're in kind of like a foresty area, and now you release the hold on them, and you kind of energize them a little. You kind of focus on them, and by focusing on whatever you focus on is what you give energy to, and you want to just tell them to walk, kind of will them to move and walk and be natural, while focusing on them. But you're not the one moving it anymore, because you did just move them, but now you're kind of just giving them energy and making and telling them to move on their own. And if you can practice that enough, they'll move. The same way, if you want them to talk, or you want them to have a personality or a soul, you think of what kind of person they are. Are they fiery? Are they cold? Are they introverted, extroverted? Are they loud or quiet? Etc. What kind of personality do they have? Think about that while kind of focusing on them. And again, you puppeteer. What would they say to you? So like, make them say hello. Manipulate their mouth and voice so that they say hello to you, and you say hello back to them. And then again, trying to give them energy, but don't puppeteer them as much. You do use less puppeting and more just trying to get them to do this on their own. And eventually you will learn the skill to essentially, and once you're done with all of this, of course, you want to kind of despawn the whole area, despawn all the people, and just release all that, or else you will, it'll kind of take it into your life. Once you do this enough, it's like they have a subconscious. You consciously do something, and then they subconsciously start to do something, and you're creating like a mental. That's like a program or a mental like thought form or whatever, and it doesn't have to be a person. It's something. If you want something to be animated, like I would, you can imagine like health bars or stamina bars or mental energy bars or whatever, like a video game, right? Or you can imagine how much money do you have, and eventually subconsciously you just learn to like this. If I'm calculating grocery costs, right, I just subconsciously kind of know how to do it as long as I feed myself the information. And it's not perfect, I'm working with decimal point numbers, so it's not going to be perfect, but it's a good estimate, right? It's a good kind of estimate, right? Okay, so you can practice. So this is what martial artists would actually do. They would practice their, fighting people within their mind. They would, what would you say? See the opponent. And I'm putting out another video which is like imagining into reality. if anyone's watched Bucky, where he imagines the mantis and he can feel the mantis, and the mantis is like making him physically get damaged. It's pretty funny. Because of his imagination, yeah, you can kind of do that stuff. Of course, I mean, you'd literally have to have, the ability of telekinesis if you want to get physically damaged from your own imagination. Not really sure why you'd want to do that, but point is, it's only as strong as you can imagine. It's like the guys who do the tulpa stuff, and then the tulpa starts like possessing them and not despawning and all this kind of stuff. That's because they strengthened their imagination so much to the point where it becomes real, essentially. Because this stuff, I mean, you've got to think about the idea of where is this physically located. We think just in the brain, and when you're doing it in your mind, technically it's kind of like an aura field around you, I think. And it's like, you think like layers of reality, fifth dimensional, third dimensional. You're doing it in like an alternate dimension of a similar space where you're in something like that. But then you can also do it in the area that you're in, you can do it there. And that's when you start to see the weird blue lights and strange things start happening. But this is not the video for that. So, what else can you do? You can practice movements. I would practice music. I would play a musical instrument. I would imagine music, or I would just practice my music, practice making melodies, practice that. I use it a lot for art. I imagine scenery and where the people are and how things look and the colors, and, to make a picture, you can do that with music. So, food, you can think like, okay, what do these two things taste like together? And you can imagine yourself eating like a soup that has different things, or a tea or whatever. You can imagine like how big is something, you're spatial, you got to do postage, you got to practice that. Otherwise, you could just have your own little escapist world. You can just kind of imagine, have your own little world where you just do whatever you want. Personally, of course, when I was young, sure most people did this, I would just imagine myself fucking whatever, like anime game character, that I wanted, because that's kind, that's what I was into. So I got very good at this. You can do that if you want, and have a fun time. Now, of course, this uses mental energy, and mental energy draws your physical energy. So if you overdo it, you will use too much energy. So don't do it too much. Of course, you'll feel it out how much you can do this and how much you can, use. But do realize this costs you energy. Imagining stuff costs you energy, and you will use it up. And the more advanced and the more like stuff you bring in, objects, and the more detailed they are, the more energy it will use. But anyway, this is kind of getting into creativity, and this is like, how you develop creativity to an extent. And imagination is an important part of reality. A lot of us just get old and give it up and stop using it and become a dried up little prune, or whatever. A piece of beef jerky, no moisture, no squishiness to us anymore. But it's not good to do that. It's not good to give up your creativity. So and also, I guess lastly, we'll talk about the whole psychic ability stuff. You astrally projecting. You can, imagine yourself at a real location or near a real person, and you can view and psych or mentally see these places. And the more you practice, the better you'll get. And of course, it's not going to be, one for one. You're not going to see everything as perfect, but you're going to get a vague but also realistic idea of things. Maybe people use it for getting parking spots or seeing where someone is. Maybe they've lost their kids and or they've lost their keys, or that's how this stuff works. It's through the imagination. And I want to try to get into your idea that it's not something beyond you. It's not something outside of you. It is. Everyone has this. You don't have to be some ultra level monk or yogi. Of course, they'll do it better because they're always meditating, practicing psychic abilities, but anyone can develop this. Anyone can do this. Any age, of course, as you get older, we kind of have less energy and we're less healthy, so it's a bit harder, but that's why children are usually the best at this, because they're just naturally, it's just what they're doing. You're imagining cartoon characters playing with you because, I don't know, you have no friends, or then your friends are busy, or, I don't know, you're just a kid and you just want to play with, beings or things or whatever. Or you don't have something, so you imagine you have it and you play with it in your mind, and, stuff like that. Or you just kind of hallucinate because you're bored. Basically, this is what people are doing when they're on psychedelic drugs. It's just stimulating that part of the imagination. So, but the problem with the drug is that it makes it harder to control. So you do get a more vivid imagination, just say if you're stoned, but you get a less controllable imagination. So you're trying to fuck some anime character and its head is turning into a dragon, and you're like, please no, please, I don't want to do this right now, and you can't control it because you're stoned. So don't use the drugs, learn to do it while sober, and you'll be happy. Anyway, I think that wraps things up. You get the idea. Play around with it and figure out what you can do. You've got your own little virtual world in your mind. You can, as I said, you practice martial arts, practice music, practice driving. If you're scared of driving, then do that. That's about enough.